Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your first day of e-learning. These are suggested lessons for you. And last time in class, last Friday, we left off with doing our linear lay-in from our image. I know some of you did not get a chance to print your image, so if you send me your image via email, share it with me from your Google Drive, I will be more than happy to put the grid on it, make sure it's the right size for you, and send it back to you as a PDF so that you can work directly from your computer screen, as I'm not sure of how many of you have a color printer at home. So now that we're done with the linear lay-ins, what we're going to do is learn a few different watercolor techniques. I sent y'all home, most of you, with this from your top drawer. And what this is a little watercolor reference sheet. And it tells you that up here, what value, intensity, and details are, and we have done that previously on one of our worksheets. Right here, we made a value scale using watercolors to control how much water you add. More water makes a light color, less water, more pigment makes a darker color. And here we discovered intensity, that when you mix two complementary colors such as blue and orange, you can get a dull color, or you mix equal amounts and you get a nice neutral gray here. On the back of that sheet is our Watercolor Techniques sheet. And this is the sheet that we're going to work on today. Some of you, however, did not get a palette because I have enough for just one set for everyone in the top drawers. What I did was Ms. Bird was kind enough to help us to get set up in bags. So we sent you home with some supplies. And I made paper photocopies of all these. So you're gonna need to look at these and figure out, let's move this over here. Here's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, brown, black. These are your primary and your secondary colors. So primary is red, yellow, blue. Secondary is 1 plus 1, so red plus yellow is orange. That's a secondary. 1 plus 1, blue plus yellow is green. And then our last combination of primaries is red plus blue equals violet, which is a secondary because 1 plus 1 again, 2. Down here in the second row are your tertiary colors. We have red, orange, yellow, green. We have two blue greens. One is more green than blue. One's more blue than green. They call this one turquoise. And then we have blue violet, red violet, and white, of course. But we know from this worksheet that we don't need to use white to make a color lighter because we can just control the amount of water we use. If you do not have this sheet with you, that's okay. You can just try it on, if you have, this is a long shot, have watercolor paper lying around. It's important to use watercolor paper, not plain regular paper, because this absorbs the watercolor differently. So if I sent you home with a bag and this sheet, you're going to have to sift through the crayons and the sponges and everything else that I gave you. So let me take my crayons out of here and set these aside for use for later. And you're going to have to look at the colors, and I'm going to say this one's red. And when I look at the two oranges, I know that this one's more of a yellow orange. So here's my tertiary color, because 1 plus 2, a primary and a secondary, equals 3. Red, orange, yellow. And here's the green. Here's my black. Here's my blue, green, or turquoise. We'll figure that out. This one's definitely blue. This is a red violet. Goes down here. Here's white. My brown. I look at these two. This one's more blue. This one's our violet. So there's our blue violet. And here is red orange. It's got more orange in it. So I am missing my yellow green, which is okay because I can always just mix yellow and green to get a yellow green color in there. I do want to work with a full set though, so I'm going to push this one aside. If you have a set like this, that's totally fine. It's just kind of a there we go. Set up our water. Here's my sponges we're going to need for today. And then I gave you all a little piece of plastic, like a little piece of an old gift card. We're gonna need that. I meant to say it was kind of a modification off of this. I also sent you home with 3 brushes, one large flat, one large round, and a smaller round. We're painting small squares today, so we're only going to need a smaller brush. So choose your smaller brush. I soaked these last night to clean them. A flat wash is just that. What you want to do is pre-wet. Let's get to work here. Pre-wet the surface, and I'm going to use just my blue. So I pre-wet my blue, and here's our flat wash. If you go over the paper and rub it too much, it's going to pill up. Now here we have a graded wash. A graded wash is very similar to the flat wash, except we're going to make a gradation. A gradation, as you know from our value studies unit, is a gradual change of color. So I can take blue, and if I go down the color wheel, blue, blue, violet, violet. I know I can take my violet over here next to blue. I'm going to take some analogous colors, and as I bring this over and bring my blue over into the violet, what we're going to have is a nice graded wash. You'll see me rinsing out my brush a lot. There we go. And that forms that nice gradation. Now we have wet on wet. I'm going to use yellow green for my background. And if I'm going to make, let's make some ground. Our ground is horizontal, it's flat. Our ground is darker in the foreground and it gets lighter in the background, so I'm going to use that graded wash technique. There it is. Now while this paint is still wet, I'm going to come around and grab some darker green because I'm going to make some tall grass. And you will see, I call it the whoosh effect. And this spreads out. And because grass grows up, I'm using vertical strokes here. Rinse that out. Down here, we have a wet on dry. So what I want to do is I'm going to create my watercolor wash here. Notice the paint runs out. I didn't pre-wet the surface, but now it's pre-wet. And in order to do my grass on here later, I'm going to let this dry. This is called dry brush. And I like dry brush. Normally in class we work on our desks because it's a nice waterproof surface. We do not have, I have a wood table, so to work on and mix colors, you can either work on a plastic lid or a nice ceramic plate. I think I'm going to use my white plate so we all can see our colors mixing. The dry brush, I'm going to make a nice, I'm going to go with blue violet here. There we go. I'm going to go with a little bit of brown. I want to make like a tree trunk color. And we all know that tree trunks, most of us think tree trunks, because this is what we've been taught, that a tree trunk is just plain brown, and that is not true. If you go and look at bark, it's got more of a gray tone. So gray is white and black. I'm going to add a little bit of that in there. I'm going to make it darker, add my blue violet, some more brown. So it's brown, blue violet, and let's add a little smidge more black. I am going to dry that off a little bit, take a little bit of paint, and now instead of painting with the tip of my brush like this, I'm literally going to come across it like this. There's our dry brush. Our dry brush makes nice tree bark. It can also make, let's use some blue-green. Mix this over here. I'm going to dry my brush off, grab some of that color, and it makes nice water because the water has some waves on it, so you can do that. Add a little more color down here for that gradation. That was too wet, so I didn't get the dry brush technique. But again, you're scraping it across the surface so that the texture of the paper shows through. Here we have edging. I love edging for trees also. I'm going to take this, my little credit card or little piece of acrylic that I gave y'all, and I'm going to grab it on the side here. And if I make a smiley face, that can also look like a tree. and I'm working upside down. So we have the curve of the tree. Remember, direction. The direction that you paint is also very important. If it's a flat ground, water, land, and it's flat, you want to paint horizontally. Hills, mountains are up on an angle, and then objects that are curved are curved. The other thing that you can do with edging that I also like are maybe some tree branches. You know, you come in here, you grab some of this paint, and you kind of stamp it. And you can make some edges of trees this way. The other thing, you can make, I think this is kind of dry over here, so let's move over there. I'm gonna grab my green and my yellow green. It's kind of a bright color. If it's too bright for you, we've already learned how to neutralize a color, so by adding its opposite. The opposite of green is indeed red, so I'm gonna grab a little bit of red and dull that out. There we go, that's a nice green. It's not as garish, obnoxious. So again, you can take the edge of the card there and just pull up, and you can make a lot of different grasses this way. You can use the long edge to make taller, some tall grass. There we go. You can make it darker right away. Remember, variety is indeed the spice of life. So here we're practicing some wet on dry. I'm going to keep going with that. I don't want to make this video too long, but we're going to get about halfway through. There we go. Ta-da! I'm going to make some shorter ones over here also. Just some short guys. A little darker, a little lighter. There's a lot of variety in there, so it keeps it interesting. Lifting and highlighting. This is good for clouds. There's a couple ways to do this. The first way, let's make our blue sky. I've got a lot of, I want to add a little more color. Starting again with a watercolor wash. Here's some of this. Grab some color. Now, 2 ways to lift color off. Number 1, squeeze your brush out, make sure it's totally dry, and then you can go ahead and move this around and lift the color off of there. The second way to lift, obviously, anything that is absorbent, there you go. You may also lift color off this way. So this is good for clouds or tops of waves when you get white caps, something like that. Scraping, we'll go back to our tall grass again. We're going to do a lighter color in the background, and we'll do a darker color in the foreground. I did not like that. That's a little bright, so I am going to take this, make my gradation. While this is still wet, we're going to take the edge of, literally the corner of this, and you can see if I wanted to make grass in here, I can make some grass, and here we have a scraping technique. And I'm literally roughing up and scraping the top of this paper, and the watercolor is sinking into those scraping marks, as you can see there. So we're gonna stop the video for now, and I will continue on with the next one, but I'd like you to all practice these 8 different techniques right now. And we'll move on to the next one in the next video.